You're listening to the Merry Band of Pirates, an unofficial Expeditionary Force podcast.
Welcome to the Merry Band of Pirates, an unofficial Expeditionary Force podcast. My name is Joey, and with me as always is the Merry Band of Pirates, Steve, Marianne, Jake, Charlie, and Andy. And we're getting into the third chapter of Columbus Day, Camp Alpha. If you've been with us since the beginning, you'll notice that we're going slow, kind of slow as molasses. We're going one chapter per episode, roughly, because this first book packs a lot into each chapter. However, this time we're going even slower. We're breaking chapter 3 into two parts due to so much exposition and world building. Just like last time, this is your spoiler warning. We'll be talking about important things that happen later in the book and further into the series, so don't be mad at us because we told you. Craig's 19th X-Force book, Ground State, just launched, so I'd like to hear from the other pirates, any of you that have listened to it or read it, preferably something non-spoilery, but that's hard to say. Anything you guys are excited about? Anything you guys are loving from the latest book?
I'll start. I'm only like 13-ish chapters in, and I won't give any spoilers away, but I think compared to like maybe the last couple of books, I'm definitely enjoying this one a bit more. Not to say that I haven't enjoyed every single book, but sometimes it might feel a little bit repetitive in terms of the situations they might get themselves into. But I think this one is a bit more exciting than that.
I'm further away in the books. I'm on chapter 29, and I have laughed a lot. And I think if people stop by me when I'm on the red light, they might just think I'm crazy because I'm repeating myself, or just there's so many little, and it's like not even full conversation. It's like sometimes just a sentence, and I'm just cracking myself up, and I'm loving it. I know there's a few back and forth between the Facebook fans and everything, but I have been loving it. I don't know. I waited, and it's been totally worth it.
That's great. I would think if anybody saw you laughing in your car, they might think you're listening to the Merry Band of Pirates podcast, but that's right.
I hope so.
I was just going to say, I personally haven't read it yet. I haven't made it there, but I'm definitely hearing a lot of things about it. I'm one that's actually trying to avoid the spoilers and being upset. So I appreciate you guys not sharing too much, but I can't wait to get there.
I've gotten up to, I think, chapter 5. So kind of hard to listen to it and make sure I'm keeping an eye on the kids and, at the school. So
yeah, I say, survival of the fittest, let the kids just figure it out and go enjoy your book. But that's me.
Yeah,
exactly.
That's a different book, Joey. That's Lord of the Flies, right?
Yeah.
No, I'm a little ways into the book, and I love I figure anybody who's listening to this is already listening to the series, but I won't say anything too spoilery. But I'm waiting for Kinsta to really break through and show us his inner ECO agent. That is what we need. Instead of him always being the straight guy, I want to see him go and really blow Scarandum's mind.
Yes.
That would be great.
I mean, like from the Dratha, I've been hoping so much that Craig just writes a whole run-up on the Dratha, because just Kingsa and Scarandum alone makes my life so much better.
Didn't he announce he was going to do that?
There's a 3-book. Last he announced 3 books of like a prequel to Scarandum that is coming after book 20.
Yes. Okay. I'm happy now.
Yeah. For anybody that's listening that didn't know that, you're welcome. It's going to happen. Look forward to it. You'll enjoy it.
So we get to be breaking news here, Andy.
Dun, 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 dun. Yeah.
That's us. That's the Merry Band of Pirates telling you everything about the world of Expeditionary Force, so that when Hollywood finally makes a movie, we get to be extras in the background because we're that knowledgeable and we're that ahead of everyone else in knowing what's going on. Right?
There you go.
Yeah.
I want to be a giraffe in a big giraffe costume.
Yeah,
awesome.
Just kind of like a big
just in
pistachio
the
nut
background.
painted black, and there's Andy's face just sticking out of it, and he's got
I'm cool
claws.
with that. I'm cool with that.
Fake slobbering drunk throwing dice at a craps table.
I could do that.
All right, start working on your giraffe accent. All right, those are great. Thanks, guys, for not spoiling it for the rest of us that hadn't had a chance to get into it, even not chapter 1 yet. Really looking forward to it after hearing what you guys had to say just now. Looking forward to laughing. Thanks, Marianne. So with that, why don't we go ahead and get into this chapter of Columbus Day? Steve, why don't you go ahead and get us started?
Well, here we are. The humans are setting foot on their first alien planet, first foreign planet. And we're going to take, because there's no space element Camp Alpha, they've got to take ships down. He goes through and describes the different types of landing craft. I always think it's interesting. I've heard him called, and he runs through several, including drop ships, but they're not really. And then drop ships is the term for the rest of the entire series. All we ever hear about again are drop ships after this, even though he says that's not the kind that you usually use to land in this situation. But
yeah.
But drop ships for what they are, and they're going to land onto Camp Alpha, this burnt, nasty planet with highs in the 120s and the lows 20 below. That's pretty drastic, and that's the good part of the planet near the equator where we'll be training. They go out of their way to make the statement that this is a great place to focus on training, which they all know means it's kind of a sucky place. And as soon as they step foot on and smell it and the experience the 107% gravity, they're going to realize very quickly that it's kind of a sucky place where they're going to get the focus on their training. I do think it's funny, the discussion of the first steps. Joe really wanted the American to be there, and no, it wasn't. And then he takes his first step and comes stumbling and tumbling off the ship, and welcome to Camp Alpha. You're an idiot, Joe.
I thought that was funny, though, how you pointed it out, Steve, how he says, yeah, dropships are a one-time use. And then for the rest of the series, oh, the dropship brought us here. The dropship brought us there. It came back. It went there. It's like, okay, Craig, you kind of went against what you said, but that's fine.
No, I think that's one of the things, when you go through in your first listen, you're just taking all that in. You don't know what to do with it. I'm not sure when it was, but it had to be in the middle of book 2 when I'm like, all they talk about are dropships anymore. Like at some point he just said, that's the term I'm going with, and went and ran with it.
It really speaks to Craig Alanson as an author to create so much content. I noticed that in book 19, people are complaining about little errors, grammatical errors, or things that maybe it was R.C. Bray who said it wrong, maybe it was Craig who wrote it wrong, but to create as much content that he has and to have as few errors as things like this, and so many things that he does actually follow up on, that he points on in these first 3 chapters. There's so many things that come back around that he actually uses. To have this be the first time that we found something where he talks about dropships in one sense, and it ends up never being like that ever again, it's pretty remarkable, I think.
Yeah, as a bit of a side, I mean, I noticed some of those small nuance pronunciations. See, look, I even did it. And I have noticed those in the past, but it's interesting because, as we all know, sometimes these books get delayed, and then when you go and listen to it, you can sometimes find where he re-recorded something and they excerpted it in, because you can hear a volume drop or a little bit of different editing to the sound of it, and it's like all of a sudden his voice got a little bit more hoarse because maybe he was sick that day. It's so interesting to hear that, and not only that, as something that I don't know if listeners would be experiencing, jumping back and forth from Columbus Day to book 19 is also a very big thing, because R.C. Bray's voice has changed. Well, I guess you could say Joe's voice has changed in the many years that he's been out battling amongst the stars and stuff. But it's cool to actually jump back and forth and hear the original sounds and interpretations, and now hear the way that they've evolved.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's just my head or because I noticed the voice different. I was talking to my friend about how Skippy sound more grown up in the book 19, and I'm like, this is weird, feeling that Skippy's an adult comparing to Skippy's a child on the first book.
Well, I think you could look at it in a different way. He's gotten more used to humans, right? So he might have had the mind of a human before because he hadn't had that experience. He was also alone for millions of years. And now he's gotten so socially, he's absorbed all this human content and culture. And, you know, he regurgitates it with his different words he uses sometimes, depending on what he's into at the moment. That I would look at it that way.
I can see that.
Yeah. All right. Well, we got to Camp Alpha. They landed. Joe talks a bit about how harsh it is, like what Steve was just telling us. And then he's assigned a job. They're putting together kind of a tent city. And as they're doing this, something funny happens. Jake, why don't you explain what's going on in this scene?
All right, so we got a little joke here, and they're actually trying to put up, I believe it's their bunkers or tents, and the wall's really heavy. And the name escapes me right now. Who told the joke? Do you guys know?
Valdez.
Valdez, he tells the joke while they're straining and putting up this wall. And I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to try to attempt to do the joke. So did you guys hear about the sad Marine in the bar? Bartender walks over to him. What's wrong? He goes, I built 10 houses. Does anybody ever say, there goes McDougall, the house builder? No, they don't. I saved 10 kids from a collapsing building. Do you ever hear anybody say, there goes McDougall, the rescuer? No. But you one sheep. I still laughed when I heard that just the other day. I thought it's great. I got to remember it for get-togethers because that's a joke you want to tell your friends and family. I mean, well, maybe not family. Okay.
I absolutely love that joke. I thought it was hilarious. Every single time I've heard it, I've laughed. I mentioned it as we were starting, and I think the way that Craig wrote this, and he breaks it up in terms of Joe explaining how he's trying to rally the guys to get them to lift up the wall, and there's breaks in the actual joke itself. And at one point, Joe is saying, "Would you shut up for a minute?" Right, and then he cuts into, "And you one sheep," and it just, you know, you laugh along with the guys as if you were right there helping them with that wall. I think you said that before, Joey, and it's hilarious. And I want to go and tell other people that joke, but I think they'll look at me funny.
I think in the right audience, I think it would be great.
Yeah,
Steve?
Sure.
It also is kind of insightful into the writing style. And we've talked a lot about in these first couple of chapters, the little bit of what is coming and a sense of what the style is going to be like. And we're going to get this a lot with on the Dutchman with our favorite engineer who's telling Skippy jokes along the way, like just inserting straight up jokes into the middle of the books along the way. So we're going to see that, and this is kind of our first little taste of it. But I also think it's important that we don't miss the internal battle that Joe is experiencing as this is happening, because his conclusion out of this entire joke is, and that's why the Army should never put me in charge of something more complicated than a rowboat. And we've talked a little bit about that self-doubt and the place of his trying to wrestle through who he is, and he's in a position of authority. And yet, what is he? He has no business being in charge of anything. And so this is, while the joke itself, standing alone, can be funny, the significance to Joe and his character development, I think we want to make sure we don't miss that.
He's actually pulling at really two different emotions. You got the humor side of things, and then at the same time you have the real life struggles, more kind of like what Steve was talking about. So as the reader, you feel that. I mean, I could imagine when you're first reading that joke, you're like, okay, where is this going? And then just seeing that one line at the end, and you're like, oh, the light bulb catches on. And you're caught off guard, just like the workers. I think that's really impressive writing right there.
All right. So what happens next is you're reintroduced or introduced to some characters, I should say, that are going to be kind of become regulars, just like Jesse Cornpone was introduced in chapter 2. We're going to be introduced to a few more characters in this chapter that are going to go on to live throughout the series. So, Charlie, why don't you kind of introduce us to those characters and maybe even a few others?
Right now, we got Joe Bishop, who's our narrator. We got Cornpone, we got Jesse, introducing us to Jesse Coulter. It keeps Joe into a familiar place. Yeah, he's leaving the planet, he's leaving Earth, he's leaving, everything that he knows to be true. But at least he has his two friends there to still keep him in touch with reality. It's not just having humans around, but having friends that, keeps him from probably going insane. If you don't have friends that well, been in the shit together, and has been able to have your back 100%, being in Nigeria with him, it is going to be a culture shock.
It's amazing how many people he introduces on the first book, and of course we never hear about them, but we get to know some of these characters very deeply throughout the first book, especially Cornpole and David Chaika. So it's amazing, like how much we get to learn about those characters and their lives and everything. I really like that.
I like the fact that we get a little bit more of Jesse and Ski in this one. A little bit more uniqueness out of them. They're more comfortable, like Jake was saying before, and Charlie was saying. I like how they go into the hoo-ah bars. Do we have to? Should we do in the galley with Colonel Joe?
In the galley with Colonel Joe, cooking lessons on the radio. Welcome to the show. It's in the galley with Colonel Joe.
In the galley with Colonel Joe, for those of you who missed the introduction of our new segment in our last episode, but we because there's so much food conversation in the course of these books, we want to take note of the places where the food comes up and set up a little segment in our podcast to talk about the food. And today in the galley with Colonel Joe, we learned about the hoo-ah bars and the description of original sawdust and raisins and gravel. But that kind of made me think, the first time I ever had a power bar was at a professional tennis tournament. I was a ball boy. I was probably like 11 or 12, and they were giving out like these protein bars. And I tasted this thing, and it was awful, just terrible. And all I kept thinking of is, I just have that picture of that experience in my head as Joe is describing the different flavors. Actually, I guess it's Cornpone describing the flavors of hoo-ah bars. So we get a few different flavors of hoo-ah bars there. Which ones would you guys have wanted to eat in that moment?
I'm particular to cinnamon cardboard myself.
I think I'll take cinnamon cardboard too.
Raisins and gravel for me.
I probably would have done raisins and gravel as well.
Northeast.
I think I would have put the two together and ate them like that.
Ooh. Oh, I didn't know it was an option.
Look at it.
Nobody ever said it wasn't.
Charlie going off book on us.
There we go. All right.
I do love the description that the raisins were tougher to chew than the gravel. So yes, in the galley with Colonel Joe, we are reminded that no matter where you are, what planet you're on, energy bars are just not that good.
That's awesome.
It's in the galley with Colonel Joe.
All right. So one of the things that they do a lot in this chapter is to talk about the world building. Like, where are we going? What are we using? How are we getting there? What are we doing when we get there? How is it all put together? And this whole chapter is just packed full of. In fact, this chapter is an hour and 39 minutes long in the Audible app. And we're only going 40 minutes into it today, guys. I don't know if you realize that, but when I listened to it earlier and I stopped where we're going to stop halfway through the chapter today, I stopped. So there's still a lot more in the chapter still to come. But the next thing I definitely want to cover, and we can't miss, are the weapons, the tech, the aircrafts. Andy, why don't you kind of do a deep dive on that and let us know what's going on with all that stuff?
Yeah, so I mean, we're going to space. We're on another planet. We're gonna get to experience like cool laser technology and heat-seeking bullets and all this. And let me just state this: Joe has a great rant at one point during this where he's like, "It's total bullshit." Uh, and they finally get exposed to it. They have the Marine Corps, Gunnery Sergeant Craig, as he says, and they a couple of Marines in the crowd cheer and say yay, and they get shown their first weapon, and it's just a stinking M4. Right, it looks exactly the same thing that they had back on Earth. What is this? You got to be kidding me! What is he? He calls it a Vietnam era weapon, I believe. And then they learn a little bit more that they're going to get a little bit more advanced ammo in terms of that they have explosive rounds from the Kristang, but they're getting a very small amount of them compared to the normal. What was it? The normal 5.56 millimeter caliber long cartridge that they are used to using. So they're really bummed about it. And you know, there's one guy, Whiskey Tango Foxtrot. I'm sorry, I have to do all the voices. But as they go on, they learn a little bit more. They get a couple of other new weapons, and then they get exposed to another thing. One of the main techs that we hear about a lot more in the series is what they call the zPhone, or as the humans dub it later on as the zPhone. So it's their tactical radio. They also get this from the Kristang. It allows for translation. It allows for camera mounted on their helmets to be seen by the rest of the squad. It allows for a lot of information. You can actually talk to anybody on the planet at any point in time. Later on, they actually have one of the French squadrons come by to their camp, and they get to play with it and hear all the different words. He learned that French toast isn't exactly called that. It's called pompadour.
That's pretty good.
I did not say that right. I listened to it this morning. So, and that remains a really cool piece of tech that we get to experience for the rest of the series. Sorry, spoilers.
Yeah, I think the zPhone is essential. It's the thing Skippy puts the big red button on. I mean, it's the thing that they try to take away from them later on so that they can't communicate with the other pirates. It's kind of a really essential component, I think, to their capacity to communicate throughout the rest of the book series.
I don't think we can gloss over the zPhones here, not only because of a funny line about the Z is as far away from I as these phones were away from any phone on Earth, but because this is one of the distinguishing features of this series in comparison to most space sci-fi. You go through most space sci-fi series, and the communication gap is a huge hurdle that has to be overcome, usually over the course of many books in the series. And I've heard Craig talk about it, like and if a species is able to put together interstellar travel, they probably could have put together a way to bridge that communication right away. But this was a conscious decision in this series that he was going to introduce the ability for dialogue and for communication in between species right away. Wasn't going to leave that as one of the hurdles that would have to be overcome in the context of the series. I think that's a really kind of distinguishing feature of the Expeditionary Force series.
Yeah, that's a really good point. In the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, they have the babblefish. It's, pretty much introduced right at the beginning. As soon as, Arthur's taken up into space, he's given a babblefish so he can communicate, right? And so the universal translator, that's what it is in Star Trek. And so you've got this capacity. Somehow in Star Wars, everybody understands what a Wookiee and a droid says. They don't have to have it, some special device. But yeah, it is super important when dealing with the intergalactic Sci-Fi to have some kind of communications capacity, and I think it's good that we stopped on it.
As you go through some of the series, Ark Royal, Lost Fleet, like in those series, like communication gaps becomes one of the major storylines over it. In this series, we're bypassing it directly with the introduction of the zPhone.
Yeah, great breakdown of the zPhone. It's very important to the series, and clearly Craig was being strategic with that. But getting back to the weapons, because that's what everybody cares about. One of the other things they got introduced to was a Bravo Javelin missile. Again, something that we've had on Earth and is kind of a pain in the butt because it's very heavy. But they have made improvements to them, or they've gotten the ability to do that. So their targeting system's improved. It can stay locked on to various different targets. The difference in the temperature between the thing you want to shoot and the thing you don't want to shoot is a lot more easy to distinguish. So there's definitely improvements there, and they were somewhat more happy about that. And then he introduces us to what they're calling the Zinger, which is based off of the Stinger that is used on Earth. This gets used later on by Joe, and it's an anti-aircraft missile launcher. We won't give away too much, but it becomes an integral part in his storyline. But they're finally kind of happy with the new tech that they've gotten, as opposed to being disappointed with the M4 before. They were able to actually use some of those weapons, it's particularly the Zinger, against some of the aircraft that they saw on Alpha. So one thing that Joe immediately points out is the fact that they're Ruhar aircraft, and one of the biggest differences is that these were specifically calling them aircraft because they were able to be used in an atmosphere, as opposed to the ones that you would have to go into interstellar travel or to go up to larger warships or anything like that. So they break it down. They give them, of course, nicknames, because what isn't the way humans go about things, and this is also another thing that Joe likes to do going forward. But they have different aircraft and dropships like chickens, buzzards, and they also call one a vulture. And they are able to actually practice on, that's practicing on drones, but they get to act as if they were going against those types of aircraft. And they all have different, uses, I guess. Some are more for transport, some are more for attack. We learn more about them later when they get more exposed to these aircraft, or at least Joe does in further chapters.
Awesome. All right, great breakdown, Andy. Thanks. All right, well, there's one character that Charlie didn't mention earlier, and that's because this particular individual has a much bigger part to play in the next half of the chapter that we're reading through right now. But I wanted to give Marianne a chance to talk about the feminine side of Camp Alpha.
Aww. Well, a big character coming up now is Shauna Jarrett. She is somebody that Joe gets some interest on, and it's interesting. Like, we see how much we talk about, like, military and traveling and everything, but at the same time, we need to think about the population of military people. Like, regularly, you see it's most male, and here and there we'll have a trickle of females, and it's very interesting to see how much Joe gets worried about the number of women in the planet with them. So he tries to be very gentle about it. He has his own self-doubt about how to handle this, because you want it or not, he's 20 years old. You need to still remember he's still learning how to handle women. And I see the whole back and forth in his own head. Like, he has this little self-conversations about how he can talk to her, what he can say, what he shouldn't say, just to be able to flirt with somebody that is mild interested on him. And she's really nice. It sounds like they had met before already in Nigeria, so he kind of knows her. The way he introduces Shauna to the group is they're doing a training session. It's a running, and the two groups meet up at some point in the trail, and this person just is running faster than him, so he decides to do like a little competition and try to run with, and of course he gets left behind. Just to discover that is Shauna. They have a little conversation about it, and she asks him that if he could be, you're the Barney guy. So there you go. We see the Barney again, which is he keeps remembering himself, like he's never gonna live that down. The whole conversation again comes to Joe showing how he's still growing up. He still has a lot to learn. That mental development on himself, and because up to at certain points of the book, at least I keep forgetting that he's 20, and then has parts that he's like, oh yeah, he's definitely showing his age.
I like how you pointed out that, yeah, he is 20 years old. And something that the rest of the guys can relate to, along with myself, is what you think about constantly when you're 20 years old. And
know nothing about.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly. Right. Yeah. And you think you do, but you don't.
We're masters in our own mind.
Oh, yes, exactly. And you hear some of that in the way that Joe talks to Shauna. And he's kind of being a little cocky about it, right? It's like, hey, Shauna, I'll see you around. It's like, and she throws it right back at him, which is great. It's a great dialogue back and forth. So it's definitely setting the precedence of his how naive he is, right?
Yeah, I don't know how much like wording, because at some point on the book, some point on the conversation, she joked about Barney, and he's like, "Oh yeah, the Barney thing," and he's like, "Oh, does that get you laid a lot?" And he's like, "Oh, I didn't think about that before." And I'm like, "Come on,
Yeah.
you're 20."
I should use this to my advantage.
Yes.
I love that you're reading into that based on how Alanson writes it, because it's really hard to write. You put in your notes that it's a meet cute, which is a term that's been around for not long, probably 5 or 8 years, about the type of romance stories you see like on the Hallmark Channel, or things like that, Lifetime movies about cute couples meeting, and this moment where he meets her running really is a meet cute that sets up for later on. And yeah, and writing dialogue like that, where you smile, you feel good about it, you're like, oh, he's meeting the cute girl, or if you're the girl, oh, she's meeting the cute boy, and the whole interplay with the Barney thing is really hard to do. And I think it's amazing that he did it. Now, unfortunately, you don't see a lot of romance in the Expeditionary Force books, but this was a great example of the fact that Craig Alanson can say, yeah, I can write that. And so if he wanted to have more, and it's sprinkled in there, but it's just not a lot.
Yeah, and I think I like to read, and this book I think has been really good about not making the romance a big part of it, and I love it. I'm very into the whole military thing, the whole fighting, but these little pebbles I think makes the book very interesting, because does the character, builds the life, makes it personable too. So that's where, like, yes, I can read tons of sci-fi military, but if you cannot make it personal, it's kind of hard to connect with the character the same way we connect with Joe. That's the thing that I love the most about this book.
You know what? It goes back to the classic story of loving war. When two people, have feelings for each other. And I don't want to get ahead of ourselves. We're going to probably talk about that in the next episode. But it's a really difficult situation. And it just proves that, nothing is fair in love or war. About the level of romance that is in this book, I think they do a good job of introducing it when they do it. It's not overwhelming, and it's relatable. And in the end, your heart it breaks a little bit for the both of them, because, we're stuck with what could have been, but never will be. And, just a tragic tale, but great writing once again.
now that we've had our starter and we've kind of pushed some potatoes and some carrots around the plate, who's ready to get into the real meat of this chapter? I mean, but it's not even. It's like part 3 of a 7-course meal, really. But it's pretty meaty stuff. This alien, allied, enemy coalition stuff. Joe at one point is, aside from training to develop his body on Camp Alpha and setting up the tents and doing all the things that they have to do, they make time to go and actually learn a little bit about what's going on in the galaxy, right? As humans thrust into this war that's been going on for millions of years, it's important that we get caught up. And so Craig Alanson kind of like hits the pause button here in chapter 3 and says, he says, Joe goes to a class and here's what he learns. And what I like is, I like how he writes it. This is actually coming from Joe. He says, it all blew my mind when I first heard it. So I'll explain it slow. Best you get comfortable because there will be a pop quiz at the end. I'll wait until you get yourself a beer. Comfy? Okay. And then he kind of goes into some background, and it's just it's a big exposition dump to basically say, here, let's draw you a chart. And some other mediums might actually hit the pause button. If you remember Emperor's New Groove, there's a point in the movie where they go to like a literal PowerPoint presentation with the llama pointing with a stick at a screen, kind of explaining, getting the audience caught up. And that's kind of what he's doing here. And he's doing it in a way where we're going to get Joe caught up, and we're going to get you caught up at the same time, right? And so he starts off by talking about the Allied coalition that at this point is the Kristang and everybody that fights on their side of the war. And in this case, there's a war and there's 2 sides. And so you better figure out who's on your side, who's on the other side, and what are all the players at play. And that's essentially what he does here. And he breaks it down pretty quickly. So let me just go through it as organized as I can. If you got questions about it, there are graphics and things you can Google and find online. You shoot us a message on social media, and maybe we can break this down in a little bit more detailed fashion, more granular sometime in the future. All right. So the Allied coalition we know starts with the Kristang because they're the ones that we're kind of working the closest with, but you'd be surprised to find out that they're not the top of the Allied coalition. Obviously, we knew that because we had to hitch a ride on a Theranan star carrier. But what you might be surprised to find out is that the Theranans aren't at the top either. The top of their Allied coalition is led by a cat-like alien species called the Maxulks, which it's hard to say. I don't know how R.C. Bray does it, but he does it quite well, and he's a professional. They're rumored to be cat-like since no humans actually ever seen them, and very few Kristang actually have. And as humans, it's kind of explained that you're never going to see a Maxult, so don't worry about it too much. The Maxults, as I mentioned, they're cat-like in appearance. They're an ancient species with incredible technology. The Maxult's homeworld is 2/3 of the way around the galaxy, so really, really far away from Earth, so you don't have to think too much about it. He doesn't really go into too much detail here, but we do find out a lot more about it in future books. Below the Maxults in their coalition are the Theranan. They're the ones we talked about in the last episode. They're the green skinned, typical alien, sci-fi alien types. They're shorter than average humans, but humanoid with 2 legs, 2 arms, 2 eyes, and a bald head. The Theranan are only responsible for a small slice of the galaxy under the Maxulks. So kind of try to imagine like there's United States federal government, and the Maxulks are like Kansas. Just a small little chunk of it. All right. Then beneath them are the Kristang, and they really only handle a couple of 1,000 cubic light years under the Theranan. So think of like, I don't know, Wichita. That's what the Kristang kind of control. And somehow humans are within that area. We're right there between the Oklahoma-Kansas border. All right, so that's our Allied coalition. There's a patron system. Obviously, there's the Maxulks, the Theranan, and the Kristang, and then of course the humans are underneath that. So we're like 4th tier. We're way down there. And the Kristang don't like their patrons, and it's kind of mutual, and that goes all the way up and down the scale. There's also an enemy coalition. So, and their situation is very similar. So let's kind of break that down. At the top, similar to the Maxulks, are the Rindaloo. The Rindaloo are a creepy-looking spider-type species. Their 2nd-tier allies in the quadrant or in the galaxy are the Giraptha, who you're going to hear a lot about on this podcast because we just love the Giraptha. But they're also creepy insect-like creatures themselves. Then the Kristang propaganda that we hear in the book is that the Rindaloo are much older than the Max Hulks, and they tried to suppress the development of other intellectuals or intelligent species in the galaxy until the Max Hulks rebelled many thousand years ago. It kind of sounds like a war propaganda, and Joe kind of even describes it like that. It's like bad war propaganda, right? So underneath the Rindaloo, you've got the Draptha. The Draptha aren't like bees; they're more like beetles. And then under the Draptha, you have the Ruhar, which we've already met. The Ruhar are a client species of the Draptha, the same way that the Kristang are client species of the Theranin. And what we learn is that it's speculated the Ruhar have slightly better technology than the Kristang. So that's the two coalitions. Above them, all of them, are an ancient species called the Elders. The technology that the Max Hulks and the Rindaloo do not extend to as far as creating or even operating are the wormholes. That whole wormhole network thing was invented by or created by a long gone species that the Kristang referred to as the Elders or the Wormhole Builders. And so the Elders they're gone. We're going to find out more about them in the future, so don't worry about them too much right now. And just some quick last thoughts on the wormholes. The wormholes kind of run themselves. Nobody runs them. And there's no known way to really control them or shut them off or damage them. You couldn't even use a nuke on them if you wanted to, and they just work. That's all you need to know, right? It's advanced alien technology. Marianne?
Yeah, they.
Okay, sorry. I don't know if you in my head I kept that meme that's the guy showing everything and drawing on a board.
Charlie Day from Always Sunny.
Yes. Yep. So Joey, you did phenomenal. You broke down Barney style so well. Like this is the best breaking down Barney style that I couldn't do it any better. Like it was awesome.
Thank you.
Andy? Yeah, I was gonna say with the I think one thing that he mentions about the wormholes is that like it's on a schedule and like nobody can change it, and they I think they say like nothing can even turn it off or affect it, but sometimes a wormhole will shift and all of a sudden it just stops working and then another one appears somewhere else. So there's no rhyme or reason to it, at least so we think. Foreshadowing. That's foreshadowing.
It's crazy when you look at the whole the system here. You got the tiers of, in this case, civilizations and how it drops down, and that's almost exactly how it is set up right here on our local, very small planet of Earth. You know, you got the big dogs that run the show, and you got all the way down to territorial parties, clans that are out there in the trenches, and they're just fighting the war. I just think it's crazy how Joe Bishop goes from one desert to pretty much another one. And I mean, I could be wrong about Nigeria, but I'm sure it's hotter than Minnesota right now. But and he finds himself in the same spot, in the same place, practically fighting someone else's war. And I think, you know, I'll get into this later down the road, but I really think that Kristang is petrified of the human beings. And the reason why I think that is because they've been fighting this war. I believe even the Ruhan and the Kristang have been fighting this war for thousands of years. Now, you go back 1,000 years in mankind, and we're still fighting on horseback. These guys were like fighting in the galaxy with spaceships and everything. And already 1,000 years later, you know, the Earthlings are catching up at a very high rate.
Yeah, that's something that they also mention. I don't know if it's in this chapter or later on about how the Rindaloo and the Max Holt have been fighting this war for eons, right? It's been over and over. And that's part of the patron system, right? Because they don't want to exert themselves anymore. So they capture these other species and make them do their bidding, just like you were saying, fighting somebody else's war. Isn't that always the case, in all honesty? The people who want to start the war are never the ones on the front line.
Oh.
And so that's really clear here, is that I guess you could say the Max Holtz or the Rindaloo are the government officials or the president or whoever is saying, yeah, go fire those nukes, have fun. You know.
There's a saying that the leaders of the countries get together for parties and play chess together, but the young men that live in the country go to war and die fighting each other, right? And this is very much, you can tell as we get into the rules next time how it's laid out. It almost explicitly says that as long as the Rindaloo and the Max Hulks don't really get involved in the war, they can let their patron species, that they govern over, essentially go and fight it all out as long as they don't break the rules, which we'll talk about more later. All right, excellent. Well, then I guess that's a wrap on this episode of the Merry Band of Pirates, the unofficial Expeditionary Force podcast. As homework, we want you guys, our listeners, to reach out to us on social with any ideas or suggestions you might have. If we like it and we feel like doing it, we'll give you a shout out. So with that, y'all have a great time, and thanks for listening.
Remember, trust the awesomeness. Did I say it right?
I think you did great, yeah.
All right, man. That was great.
Making sure.
One take, Jake.
A genuine cornucopia. A plethora? I love the way he says that. That was one of my favorite parts about that. I appreciate Craig's writing of how he broke the joke up more.
Yeah.
Because if you just say the joke in its entirety, it's not as funny.
Yeah.
No.
But the fact that they're struggling and he's like, would you shut up a minute?
The way he writes it
Yes.
by breaking it up is brilliant.
Yes.
Because you feel like you're there, one of the guys, or one of the girls, in Marianne's case, lifting the tent, right? Lifting the tent wall and then collapsing under it because of it's great.
What do you
All right.
What do you have there?
It's just I bought the book 18
Oh, you
awesome.
physically
because
bought it.
it came earlier. The book itself came earlier than the audiobook, so I went and bought the book, and I read probably 3 chapters before I was like, oh, okay, the audiobook is here. Let me jump to it.
I'm on the search for one of the Expeditionary Force books at like a Savers or like a flea market or something. I don't know. I just want to like relive it and buy it that way. I'm not trying to be cheap. I bought all the audiobooks, but like in terms of physical copies, if I see it, I'm buying it. I just kind of have to.
Yeah, I'm thinking about I want to make the whole shelf just the books.
Yeah.
Now that we are recording and everything, so slowly I'm going to start adding. I want to buy a Barney and have it sitting somewhere. Like
That's
I'm going to
a
start
great
having.
idea.
I'm going to start having like things sitting around the room since I have the space.
We've lost Charlie though.
Yeah, he's just a non-corporeal spirit floating amongst the void.
Amongst Aurora Borealis. He's become, coronal mass ejections from the sun. He's just become urethral.
Charlie, are you there? Can you hear us? Come in. Right, control the Major Tom.
He's mute. Oh, he's muted. No, not anymore.
Yeah, I don't know why it's not showing me.
Oh, you're literally are invisible, bro. What the heck?
Yeah, that's weird. My camera's on, the lights flash, or the lights on, and nobody's home.
There he is.
Hey.
Oh.
Oh, that works. Now I just need to.
That's the true IT tech.
Yeah, turn it off again.
Turn it back on again.
That's like every time somebody says, "Oh, I need to message a message," IT is like, "Did you turn off and turn on my phone?"
They're gonna say that the very first thing.
That's the first thing.
Step three is to kick it.
Yeah,
That works,
exactly.
Yeah, I like it.
Where's the hammer?
I'm wearing my kilt right now, but you can't see it. It's kind of
I don't want to.
Here, let me.
This is a family show, Joey.
Making
Fun fact,
t-shirts.
guys, and this could be in the outtakes. I got a friend to download Columbus Day while we were podcasting.
That's outstanding.
Let's go.
They're
I
like,
don't know.
Oh,
Hopefully
Fred!
she likes it, but
what are you doing, Andy? Well, I'm on my podcast talking about my favorite book series. Oh, what is that? It's called The Expeditionary Force, and the first book is
Yeah.
Columbus Day. You should go to Audible download it. Bing, done.
it was she did it on Kindle. But
Oh,
I'll take it.
that's fine.
She
Yeah,
has,
we
she has
take
Kindle
it.
Unlimited, and they're on there. So
So that just means Craig has to send you the check instead of Podium.
yes, I will send you a bill.